1992 is not a year on which I shall look back with undiluted pleasure. It has turned out to be an Annus Horribilis.
What happened during Queen Elizabeth's Annus Horribilis, the year 1992? If you're thinking about what Annus Horribilis means, here's what it means. Annus Horribilis is a Latin phrase, meaning horrible year. It is complementary to Annus Mirabilis, which means wonderful year. 3 decades later, since Elizabeth II's famous speech, the phrase Annus Horribilis is still passed around in today's discussions. Perhaps, at that time, the monarchy's popularity and relevance seemed at a low ebb, considering all the incidents that the royal monarch endured during that time. Also, we do not know for a fact the reason why the Queen chose Latin, a dead language, to describe the year 1992. Anyway, if you're thinking, how was the year 1992 for the British royal family? Then stay tuned, because in this video, you're going to find out a lot of horrible things that happened in this unfateful year. And lucky for the media, they kept up with the saga of that year, which made it easier for us to track what exactly happened. Let's begin with the first month of 1992, January. January is the month of starting the year fresh, with great progression and making yearly checklists. However, for the royal family, the month of January saw a horrible turn. It was during this time that the Duke of York, Prince Andrew, and his Duchess Sarah Ferguson decided to end their marriage. They told the Queen that their marriage was effective in the end. Though the Queen wasn't delighted to hear such news, she asked them to wait before making any definite decision. Later that same month, something happened that sprung everyone into pointing fingers at the Duke and Duchess relationship. The Daily Mail managed to find and publish photographs of Sarah Ferguson with an American millionaire, Steve Hyatt. The picture showed the two intimately acquainted, and that wasn't a good image for the royals. Prince Andrew and his wife Sarah were married for 6 years. At the time, they had 2 children, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie. There was no doubt that their relationship was quite an unconventional one, since the pair divorced later in 1996, but remained close and even lived together at Windsor. The two first met when they were around 3 years old on the sidelines of a polo field. Sarah Ferguson's father was a retired army major, and Andrew's father was Prince Philip. The next unfortunate event happened in the next month itself, the month of February. This was the time when the People's Princess, Princess Diana, was found sitting alone at the Taj Mahal sets. But wait, let's go back to the time when the people of India were excited to welcome Prince Charles and Princess Diana. The couple embarked on a royal tour to India in February of 1992. During this time, the royal couple was already dealing with a lot of issues in their marriage. Starting with the extramarital affair of Prince Charles with Camilla Bowles and Princess Diana, who was still dealing with all that was happening around her. Yes, it wasn't easy for the couple, but their royal tour to India was something that everyone looked forward to. Also, palace officials hoped that this tour would resonate a diplomatic stance on the world stage, but nothing else happened. When Princess Diana was taken to the Taj Mahal in the country's capital, she was seen sitting alone outside. Prince Charles, on the other hand, was working elsewhere. The images taken by paparazzi were obviously saying that the relationship was already showing signs that it wouldn't last. As she posed for an image while she visited the stunning 17th century marble mausoleum, her lone picture became symbolic of her feelings of isolation. The next month, March saw the breakdown of the Duke and Duchess of York. Remember what happened in the month of January? Well, things got worse in March of 1992. This time, the couple, Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson, announced their separation. Though later in the year, Prince Andrew would be known for even more scandals in the royal family. This was where it all began. It took place on March 19, 1992. When they announced their separation, it created a lot of undesirable headlines. Additionally, The BBC reported that the Queen found speculation around Andrew and Sarah's relationship especially undesirable, as a statement was released saying that lawyers had initiated discussions about a formal separation between the Duke and Duchess of York. 4 years later, they went on to divorce. However, they continued to be close friends, and some even report that the two even lived together. Recently, when Sarah was asked about her relationship with Prince Andrew, she described it as the happiest divorce couple in the world. As we know, 1992 was the year that everything went wrong. If you thought the divorce of Prince Andrew and Duchess Sarah was the only terrible thing that happened, then the month of April was even worse, because it was then that Princess Anne and her husband, Mark Phillips, announced their divorce. You must be wondering if this year was even a good one for royal couples, right? Well, from Prince Charles to Princess Diana, Prince Andrew and Duchess Sarah, and now Princess Anne and Mark Phillips, things did not seem to follow the right trend. Anyways, let's get back on track. When Princess Anne announced her separation from her husband Mark Phillips in August 1989 after nearly 16 years of marriage, everyone wondered, why now? However, it wasn't until 1992 April that the divorce was granted, and a statement was made to that effect. However, the answer to why now would only be discovered later in December. But people already knew by then that a romance had blossomed between Anne and her mother's equerry, Timothy Lawrence. Though this wasn't made sure of at the time, the news broke out soon after they went public with their relationship in 1992. Later, Princess Anne went on to marry Timothy Lawrence, but this wasn't the only plot twist in the couple's royal marriage. Earlier that year, in 1991, news broke out that Mark Phillips actually had another daughter with a New Zealand art teacher. This incident was said to have happened in 1985, a year before the couple filed for divorce. And there you have it. Just when things started to settle down, in the month of May, another stirring of concern arose in the month of June. Remember when Prince Charles and Princess Diana made their royal tour of India? Well, things already seemed to be working against their marriage. It was this month that Andrew Morton, a renowned author, wrote and released a biography of Princess Diana. The contents of his book discussed Diana Spencer's life experiences. The biography literally lifted the lid on Diana's unhappiness within the royal family. Titled Diana, Her True Story, it shared a lot of personal and secret information that no one knew about. When it was published in 1992, it made headlines for its revelations. These revelations included the fact that Charles had been cheating on Diana with Camilla Parker Bowles, and that Diana had struggled with mental health issues and disordered eating. At the time, Diana denied cooperating with Morton on the book. Only after her death did Morton reveal that the princess had supplied him with tape recordings detailing her struggles. The book seemed to break a dam in the royal public discourse. Of course, the perfection of the royal family was a facade. There were surely many unhappy marriages preceding those of 3 of Elizabeth's 4 children, but the family kept up appearances, and the public seemed happy, for the most part, to buy into the illusion. The exposure of Charles's infidelity and descriptions of emotional cruelty at the hands of royal family members rendered the lofty beings in the palace knowable and thus open to critique. In her biography of Diana, The Diana Chronicles, Tina Brown marks the publication of Morton's book as a turning point for the royal family. Never again would they seem untouchable. The storm, when it broke, did more than make the teacups dance. It blew through the House of Windsor and every assumption of establishment consensus, discretion, deference, and mutual protection. It asserted that Diana wouldn't settle for the system of structural infidelity that maintained royal marital facades in the past. Brown writes, "If the royal family was as imperfect as every other family in the kingdom, it might as well be treated as such, an idea that had implications beyond the soap opera of the moment." These revelations shook the monarchy, because by the time the book was published, millions of people all over the world had a better understanding of how the royal family was. While the world was still reeling from the biography, the British royals faced a barrage of mockery and disturbing comments in July 1992. However, the most disturbing case was yet to surface, and it shocked the whole world. In August, tabloid scandals surfaced. Remember the time when Prince Andrew and Sarah announced their separation? Well, things seemed to take another turn of despair for the royal family. Though they had announced their separation, the media managed to get Sarah Ferguson's picture on the front page of the Daily Mirror. The picture was published on August 20, 1992. It showed the Duchess of York by a swimming pool, having her toe sucked by her financial advisor, John Bryan. Though the royal couple wasn't together anymore, it was still very much a royal scandal. Sarah was with the Queen and her daughters on the annual royal holiday in Balmoral. It was then that the news broke out. Fergie had to face the Queen's cold anger before fleeing south. And it was this scandal that was seen as a turning point in Sarah's interactions with the royal family. Later, she revealed that they were eyes wide and mouths ajar at the news. But that wasn't the end of it. Just 3 days later, on August 23rd, The Sun published a front-page story about a recorded conversation between Diana and James Gilby, which would become known as the Squidgygate scandal. The conversation, which dated back to 1989, featured her speaking about her life in the royal family. But what was the relationship between Diana and James Gilby like? Were they close to one another? Since in the tape, James referred to Diana as Squidgy. Well, according to Tina Brown, Diana and Gilby had first met each other before her marriage to Charles and reconnected in the late 1980s. So, they were acquainted for years before she married Charles.
Frankie said to me today, she said, I sat next to Nigel Haver the other day and all we could talk about was you.
At the same time that the recordings were released, there was an intense pre-divorce proceeding going on between the Prince and Princess of Wales. As a result, there was a protracted PR conflict that became known as the War of the Waleses. The Duke and Duchess of York had already divorced by this point, and Charles and Diana, the heir apparent, were the center of attention. But the world was caught off guard when the tapes were made public. Speculation in the media and in court circles reached a fever pitch. Patrick Jeffson, Diana's private secretary, wrote about the tense media competition the couple engaged in his memoirs. Secret briefings to journalists, open collaboration with TV documentaries, and separate appearances at various public events on the same day were just a few of the many tactics they used to try to keep each other out of the spotlight. When Jeffson visited Kensington Palace, he recalled the atmosphere there to be like a slowly spreading pool of blood leaking from under a locked door. Diana was even heard describing the royal family by saying, "After all I've done for this fucking family." The 3-year-old tapes that came to light amid a battle over tabloid readership allowed something even more significant to happen. Though at this time, magazines outside of the United Kingdom were less restrained in their reporting than the British press. There were even freelance paparazzi who were employed in gaining more information on this by using ever more extreme tactics to try and coerce Diana in particular into an inconsiderate reaction. However, if you thought that was it, well, it's not all. In 1992, there were more difficulties on the global stage. The Queen and Prince Philip paid a visit to Australia, but the welcome they received was not as enthusiastic as on their earlier visits. Eggs were also thrown at the Queen as she toured Dresden in October during a state visit to Germany, where the memory of RAF wartime bombings was still fresh. The press even dubbed Charles and Diana the Glums when they visited Korea in November of that same year. Back home, the monarchy was dealing with difficult issues. Gloomy discussions about the monarchy's long-term future had already started in the spring. There were discussions regarding the Queen's tax exemption, as well as the large royal family that was funded by the civil list. However, nothing was worse than what occurred at Windsor Castle. On 20th of November 1992, a fire broke out at Windsor Castle. 115 rooms, including 9 staterooms, were destroyed. A faulty spotlight ignited a curtain next to the altar in Queen Victoria's private chapel, which is where the fire started. The fire was unstoppable within minutes and had reached St. George's Hall next door. Around 11:30 in the morning, the fire was first noticed, and within 3 hours, 225 firefighters from 7 countries were fighting it. The Royal Library did not suffer any damage because the fire break at the opposite end of St. George's Hall remained unbroken. A rosewood sideboard and a very large painting by Sir William Beechey that could not be removed from the wall in time were the only pieces of art that were destroyed in the fire. The castle suffered extensive damage and was fully repaired within the next 5 years. The restoration of the castle ended up costing £36.5 million, which is equivalent to £62 million today, despite initial fears that it would cost £60 million. Furthermore, drawing out the palace from such widespread damage was feared after assuming control for more than 10 years. Royal palaces like Windsor Castle that are occupied are too valuable to insure, and items in the royal collection are not covered by loss insurance. The Queen's Bank, Coutts, announced on February 16, 1993, that a separate trust would be created to gather financial support from individuals for the restoration's expenses. On April 29, 1993, it was announced that for the next 5 years, the public would be charged £8 admission for at Buckingham Palace and the castle precincts, covering 70% of the cost. The Queen made a personal contribution of £2 million and agreed to begin paying income tax in 1993, making her the first British monarch since the 1930s to do so. Finally, everyone's heart was broken when Prince Charles and Diana announced their separation. It seemed like there was no end to the royal dramas as they continued to play out publicly right until the end of 1992. On December 9th, Charles and Diana's separation was announced. Prime Minister John Major read out a statement in the House of Commons saying that with regret, they had decided to separate. The statement said the decision was reached amicably and that there were no plans to divorce and that their constitutional positions are unaffected. The New York Times described it as the unhappy ending to a storybook marriage gone badly wrong. And finally, we make it to when the Queen gave her Annus Horribilis speech. On November 24, just 4 days after the Windsor Castle fire, the Queen delivered her Annus Horribilis speech. In the wake of Friday's tragic fire at Windsor, she said, "This generosity and wholehearted kindness of the corporation of the city to Prince Philip and me would be welcome at any time. But at this particular moment, it is especially so." She expressed a hint of possibly naive optimism regarding how future generations will judge the events of this tumultuous year, noting that distance is well known to land enchantment, even to the less appealing views. As a result, it has the immeasurable benefit of hindsight. And finally, her Christmas message summed up practically what happened in the year 1992. The Queen gave her annual speech, summarizing the events of 1992, which she did every year during her reign. Although it was not as memorable as her speech in November, it acknowledged the family's difficult days and thanked the public for its support and encouragement. The Queen stated, "It has indeed been a somber year, as some of you may have heard me observe. Christmas, on the other hand, is undoubtedly the appropriate time to attempt to put it behind us and find a moment to pray for those, wherever they are, who are doing their best in a variety of ways to improve 1993. Tell us your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.